Hello guys, gals, non-binary pals. My name is Mal and I am the zookeeping interpreter here at Trailside Museums and Zoo. And on today's Animal Spotlight, we're going to be talking all about snakes. Love them or hate them, they're here to stay. And here today with us, we have Chex, who is a garter snake, one of the most widely distributed snakes in North America. And that's because these guys are habitat generalists. You can find them just about anywhere, in woodlands, meadows, and even suburbs, living under your house. These guys also eat pretty much anything. They like insects and amphibians, small fish and small mice. Garter snakes, in fact, are actually one of the only animals who are immune to bufotoxin, or the poison produced by the American toad, meaning these guys are their top predator. Now, would you believe me if I told you the garter snake was actually venomous? Well, sort of. To something small like a mouse or a toad, these guys have a neurotoxin in their saliva used to paralyze their prey to make them easier to swallow. Now, for somebody big like us humans, that neurotoxin won't affect us at all. So these guys are completely harmless. And for a lot of folks who are afraid to have them in their yard, these guys are quite beneficial if you're not a fan of the rodents. When a garter snake is feeling threatened, it can release a musk from its anal glands to try to ward off the predator. These guys can also coil up, hiss, and even strike. Now, one thing you can always see snakes doing are sticking out their tongues like that. You can see that Chex here has a forked tongue that she's sticking in and out of her mouth. And this is how snakes smell. They have an organ in the back of their head called the Jacobson's organ. And the way they smell is kind of like a game of hot and cold. They stick out that two-pronged tongue, and they stick it back in the Jacobson's organ. And the side of the brain that the scent is coming from will light up, steering the snake in the direction of that smell, either their prey or another snake. And after that, it's just like hot or cold. They move back and forth to pinpoint exactly where that smell is coming from. All snakes we have here at Trailside are native to New York, meaning these guys need to hibernate during the cold winters. All of our snakes hibernate in what are called hibernaculums, caves or crevices in rocks, or even your basement, where it's below the frost line and it's going to be a little bit warmer for them to hibernate. In the springtime, these guys emerge and they're ready for the mating season. Females emerge before the males and they let off a pheromone, or a chemical signal used to communicate with each other. The female's pheromone communicates that they're ready to mate. Next come the males, who follow the females out of their hibernation. Now, a couple of sneaky males have developed a trick to getting the girls. Some male snakes have learned how to reproduce the female's pheromone, and they will give off the female pheromone, and the other males will chase after them, thinking that they themselves are a female. Now, while the other males are busy with that, our sneaky little male will slip away and get to the girl. These guys are oviviparous, meaning that they give birth to live young instead of laying eggs, just like mammals. Snakes are what we call cold-blooded. Now, cold-blooded doesn't mean that their blood is cold. They're ectothermic, meaning that they can't control their body temperature like we do, so instead they rely on their external environment to change their body temperature. That's why you'll often see snakes basking out on rocks in the sun to keep themselves warm. One big misconception about snakes is that they're slimy, and while frogs and salamanders may be covered in slime because they breathe through their skin, snakes do not. Instead, they are covered with smooth scales to help them slide along the ground. Our next snake today is Twigs, the black rat snake. And can you guess what he likes to eat? In addition to rats and other small mammals, black rat snakes also feed on birds and eggs. And one thing that's going to help them to do that is being arboreal. That means that these guys are excellent climbers. So while I had to hold on to Chex, Twigs has no problem holding on to me. Black rat snakes are constrictors, like pythons and boas, meaning that they kill their prey by squeezing onto it real tight. Now, these guys' defense when they're feeling threatened by a predator, such as a hawk or a cat, is pretending to be a rattlesnake. Everybody wants to be a rattlesnake. So even though they don't have a rattle on the end of their tail, they'll still shake it and mimic the way a rattlesnake shakes their tail and try to act like they're venomous. Now, a lot of folks might actually mistake these guys for the venomous cottonmouth, but I can assure you these guys are completely harmless. Now, as snakes that hibernate in hibernaculums, along with the garter snakes, these guys have earned the nickname the pilot snake. Now, back in the old days, folks saw these snakes going into hibernaculums with other snakes, such as rattlesnakes, and they believed that these guys were leading the snakes to safety of the den in the winter. And so they gave them the name the pilot. In addition to their strength, did you guys know that black rat snakes are the longest native snake of North America? These guys can reach lengths of up to 8 feet long. Our final snake we have today is the milk snake. Now these guys don't like milk. These guys are what are called king snakes, meaning that they're the king of the snakes, and they like to eat other snakes. Now the myth that these guys like to drink milk came from back when these guys were found in the barns. And people used to think that they were drinking the milk from the cows. Well, in reality, they were probably just in the barns because there's lots of mice and rodents for them to eat in there. Another neat thing that snakes do is they shed their skin each month. This is called edictus. And that's because snakes never stop growing. That's right, these guys have what's called indeterminate growth. So the older a snake is, the longer it gets, and it never stops growing throughout its entire life. So they need new skin each month to match this new growth. Like our other two species of snakes, milk snakes den communally as well. But how does that work if they eat other snakes? Well, in the wintertime, these guys call kind of a snake truce. And that's because, being cold-blooded, a snake's metabolism begins to slow down as it gets colder out. And once it gets below 65 degrees Fahrenheit, these guys can't digest. So hunting and eating other snakes in the wintertime really isn't much good for these guys. Now, milk snakes come in all sorts of different patterns. And you can see the patterning on this one changes from her belly to her back. And that's so when she's curled up to a predator, she looks like she's 3 different snakes rather than 1. Now, some milk snakes are a bright striped red, mimicking the venomous coral snake. Now, these guys aren't venomous, but again, everybody wants to be venomous. And this is called Batesian mimicry, when an animal that's not venomous instead looks like one that is venomous to avoid predation. In addition to lacking legs, did you know snakes also lack eyelids and ears? For hearing, these guys rely on using vibrations to determine where their prey is or if a predator is coming by. And as for blinking, well, they don't need to do that. I know it sounds cliche, but snakes really are more afraid of you than you are of them. In fact, out of the 17 species of snake native to New York, the timber rattlesnake, the Massasauga, and the copperhead are the only 3 species that are venomous. If you see a snake in your yard, don't panic. These guys aren't likely to bother you unless you bother them, and they certainly aren't going to chase after you. Instead, maybe say thank you. After all, these guys are the ones keeping the rodent populations in check.